recession, strikes, and a prime minister attempting to pass legislation to ban strikes. What is actually happening in the UK? Happy New Year, everyone. Today we are using Maslow's pyramid to explain the perfect storm we are in and provide a new perspective.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Needle Movers podcast, a podcast that brings you the lessons, books, and concepts we wish we'd known earlier on in our life. As always, here with you, Valerio Tommaso, and my co-host, Mark Jasons. Hello, Mark.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our, deep dive series. Happy New Year. It's our first episode of the year.
And as Mark alluded to, if you're listening today, it's from our deep dive series where we will be discussing Maslow's pyramid in the context of what is happening in the UK right now. As you mentioned, recession strikes and a prime minister attempting to pass legislation to ban strikes from happening.
So, what is Maslow's pyramid in the first place? There are 5 levels in Maslow's pyramid. And if we start at the bottom of the hierarchy and work our way upwards, the needs are layer 1, the physiological, i.e., food and clothing needs. Then there's the safety, which is, say, job security. And then there is love and belonging needs. And then, which encompasses, I guess, friendship and then esteem, and finally self-actualization. So from the bottom, it starts with physiological, safety. I'm trying to figure out how to do my fingers. I'm just going to go up. Physiological, for safety, love and belonging needs, esteem, and self-actualization. So it really goes up in a hierarchy form of the pyramid. So the underlying idea here is that as people begin to satisfy their needs within a particular level of the pyramid, they then graduate into being motivated by the higher needs. So you basically accomplish the first one, work your way up the steps until you're at the top of said pyramid. Maslow's pyramid.
And there is this great quote from Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which reads, if all air were sucked out of the room you're in right now, what would happen to your interest in this book? You wouldn't care about the book. You wouldn't care about anything except getting air. Survival would be your only motivation. But now that you've got air, it doesn't motivate you. This is one of the greatest insights in the field of human motivation. Satisfied needs do not motivate. It's only the unsatisfied needs that motivate.
It kind of reminds me of the word insatiable. And I know for myself, I think I've mentioned to you how I feel like I'm not satisfied. Like I'm always searching for something else. You complete something, but that's like a step, which is kind of funny now that we're talking about Maslow's pyramid because you always have the next thing. And it's very true. I never thought about how when it's unsatisfied is when it's being driven, but when it's satisfied, where's the motivation anymore? You've got what you wanted. Especially if I think of it like a meal that you wanted to eat, you ate it, and now you're like, I'm full. You're not like, I want to eat again. Well, depends on you, but it's like, yeah, if you're full, you're full. But according to Maslow, the highest level needs, so that top of the pyramid, that tip top that we try to strive towards, is self-actualization. So a process by which we achieve our full potential. Self-actualizing people have both a more efficient perception of reality and more comfortable relations with it. Sounds nice. Must be nice. This includes the detection of what is, say, phony and or dishonest, and the accurate perception of what really exists. So rather than a distortion of the perception by one's own needs, self-actualizers accept themselves, others, and nature. They are not ashamed or guilty about being human with all its shortcomings, imperfections, and frailties and weaknesses. Like they're just more accepted. It sounds like being at super peace. And it kind of makes me wonder if meditation is like a cheat code to, to then accept all the levels below in the pyramid so that you can quickly get to self-actualization. But who knows? But nor are they critical of these aspects in other people. That's a real crucial bit here, right? Because it's one thing to accept yourself, but they respect themselves and esteems of them. Yeah, they respect and esteem themselves and others. And so, whereas some people might be able to do it for others and not themselves, therefore they take themselves and give themselves a treat themselves worse, like they wouldn't treat their friends. I think I've heard this a lot, but they're also able to treat themselves well whilst keeping others up to the same esteem, which is hard to achieve. It might be very easy to help others and not yourself, or help yourself and not others, but to do both, that's self actualization.
I don't feel like you ever help me, Mark. You just like take your foot and push me down.
I didn't ever say I was at the top of the pyramid, okay? That's your problem. Why don't you help yourself, okay? Then work on it.
So if we look at the layers of the pyramid, as Mark mentioned earlier, at the bottom of the pyramid is what you've got called physiological needs. So those are the essential human elements that are needed for survival. That's your air, that's your food, that's your drinking, that's your shelter, your clothing, your warmth, sleep, sex. Those are all the basic needs that are needed by a person. And if those needs are satisfied, then we can think of the human body being in optimal control. Whereas if they're not
Mm.
satisfied, that the body is not in optimal control. And Maslow considered physiological needs the most important when it comes to human being. And there needs to be a satisfaction of them in order to be able to cope with the other layers of life.
This is hilarious to me because it sounds like what people say to their wives when they're like getting turned down. They're like, come on now, it's one of my physiological needs. I need it. I need food, drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, sex, sleep. That's all I need. And that's how you end up sleeping on the couch. So you get that sleep, but the rest might not be on on the table anymore. But yeah, the
Welcome
second
to
level is
Days in Mark's life.
days in my life. It's what I'm trying to set up for you. But yeah, the second level is the safety needs. So once you've managed to get your physiological needs sorted, you get to the next level of the pyramid, which is safety, and that's once an individual's like needs are met, they and satisfied. So you have to have satisfied those. The needs for security and safety become super salient, like they are what's required. So people want to experience, more order, predictability, and control in their lives. This is why when things don't make sense or are illogical to them, it creates anarchy or anxiety, and it can basically change your mood and morale, and that can destabilize the entire pyramid. These needs can be fulfilled by family and society. So, this is why we have things like police, schools, businesses, and medical care, things that we think will allow us to gain that stability. It give you that security. So, for example, say emotional security or financial security are under the brackets of, say, employment and social welfare or law and order, or providing that freedom from, I guess, fear, and providing that social stability. Whereas so people look to either rent stable and make sure they're able to afford their rent, or purchase a property. You go gym and make sure you've got that health and well-being. This is where you get safety against any accidents or injury. So you've now got shelter. You've now got, made sure you're insured in certain places, and all those security aspects of it are what are part of this section of the pyramid. One thing that is funny when I think about it, and this the second layer of the pyramid is you may not know some aspects of security. So you might find that you've not gotten, like, say, life insurance or something, and it's because you're unaware, but you're still looking for safety, right? But the moment you talk to, say, a financial advisor, or you buy your first property, and they're like, you need to insure yourself. You are now worth X amount of money, and you need to pay this off. That's when you're like, security. I still need security. So it's not that, because you might think of other people who don't have certain aspects of security, but because you're not aware of it, it doesn't mean it's not a basic need or a second one in the pyramid. It's just, once you become aware, it suddenly perks up. So, for instance, when COVID wasn't on anyone's radar, no one was trying to get security or safety from that. But the moment it popped up, your health and well being became under risk, and that might have destabilized your whole pyramid.
I love how financial advisors, the first thing they do is they try to sell you insurance. They try to make you think that you're really important, that you're worth the money, that you're worth keeping alive and stuff. But really, all they're trying to sell you, especially when you have a mortgage, is they're trying to sell some sort of a security for the mortgage company to be satisfied in case you pass on,
I was gonna
because you're a
say,
liability now.
I was gonna say, they were lying to you, Val. You're not important. Your life doesn't matter. Your esteem doesn't.
I feel so hurt by that.
I was like, yeah, you knew they were lying the moment they said it about you.
But I had a question for you.
Hmm?
So you talked about the safety needs. Do you think that's one of the primary reasons as to why people will tend to move around the country, or they will tend to move abroad? Do you feel that one of the main motivators is to increase this sense of safety?
Is it safety or security? I guess safety needs incorporate security. So yes, I think it is part of why you might move to somewhere which better facilitates your life, better gives you the control that you need or want with it. So I always think about like the people who move to lovely islands, like maybe before their new law, Bali and places like that, where they're able to then have a higher like living amount, like they're able to live at a better state, but also they can now pay for things that they couldn't before, thus like security and all these additional things that give them that health, well-being, and feeling of having control. Um, and unless you're forced to, this is very different. If you're a refugee, then it's just shambles. But yeah, if it's a choice that you're actively making to better yourself, and vice versa, forget Bali, moving to places like the UK or America or something, you're doing that to better your position, give yourself more, like get away from whatever you were at before and build yourself up. So yeah, I think it does.
Okay, it's it's interesting because I've always viewed it as I moved around the country quite a bit. Obviously, I've also moved abroad, etc. And I've always viewed it as oh, I'm moving because I want X better job. But I never thought about it in the terms of the pyramid. That really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to improve my second layer. Um,
Mm,
when you look at the pyramid, the first two layers are actually known as the basic needs, and I never viewed it as a method for me to improve my basic needs. I always viewed it as a way to maybe, I don't know, get a better career or get an opportunity of a better career, and as a consequence of that, um, I was trying to satisfy my need for drive, but really perhaps I was more attempting to satisfy my access to the basic needs. But having said that, yes, sorry, I can see you want to say something.
I was just going to ask, but do you typically even consider when doing actions, oh, this is to fulfill my basic needs? Like maybe when you go to the bathroom, but we're at the stage, and I'm speaking for you, but I think we're at the stage that when we choose certain meals, we're able to go a bit like eating to survive versus eating because you're like, I would love to go to this restaurant and have this type of meal. You know what I mean? That feels more luxury. You know what I mean? So it doesn't, to me anyway, feel more like, oh, I'm satisfying the basic need of eating, unless you know what I mean? When you're really hungry and you're like, I need to eat to survive. But if you don't get to that stage, that's why I'm asking, does it really come to your head as much when you're doing things that this is a basic need? This is something I need as a standard.
So it doesn't come to my head. However, I'm very much well aware that I started my career at roughly, I think it was at 25.7K a year.
Oh, look at this
And
rich man.
every time I got a pay rise, to the point where probably at the moment I'm at three times what I used to be when I first started my career. Every time I got a pay rise, my standard of living got adjusted. So
Mm,
at my very beginning of the career, it almost felt unconceivable that I could be at the position where I am right now. And I thought, oh,
mm,
if I ever am in that position, I'll be fine because those are my expenses. I'll be able to put so much on the side. I'll be able to afford so much. But actually, what has happened is that my standard of living has adjusted, and because my standard of living has adjusted, I don't see that huge difference that I had initially thought that I would get with such a high salary. And so
mm,
I guess what I meant is that now when I'm looking for a job in the past few months or years, I should say, when I looked for a new job, I guess salary did play a factor. And because salary did play a factor, I viewed it as a way to improve improve my affordability and improve the way in which I was able to have a better standard of living again. So move up that ladder a
Mm.
little bit more. So because of that, I guess I could almost summarize it or see it as a way of attempting to improve my basic needs. But you're right that I don't have to worry about having to go to a restaurant. I don't have to worry about spending a bit more. Certainly not as much as when I was a student, because I was cheap as anything when I was a student. um, but that's why I mentioned it in the context of attempting to improve my basic needs.
Makes sense. Yeah. I think the same happened with me though. I started on such a low salary with my work placement, and then it like tripled with my first job. And so but I was always paying half of something. Like I felt like I was in a very long relationship, and so I felt like whatever I was making, I was giving away some of it. And then once that ended, I was feeling rich beyond my means at the same salary, and so I was like, "Oh, I can live forever." But then as it increased,
Sorry, I can
uh,
live forever. Just cracking me up.
yeah, of course, I was infinite. Like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to die anymore. It's not
I've got
even
an
an option.
infinity stone here.
But then as the salary increased, and of course they say I always thought about this with like lottery winners when they get it too early and they haven't like sorted out how they'll manage it and stuff. They didn't sit with it for like 6 months or something. They just start spending, and of course they live beyond their means or live
Mm,
to an excess, and you just whittle it down. So unless and that's why I think maybe, and I'm curious. We'll get to the end of this pyramid and we'll discuss it, but maybe if you reach self actualization and you're at that point, do you then like regardless of how much you make, you know, your and this is what financial advisors do too, right? They see how much it is you spend, that is what you're living on, you know what I mean? Comfortable. It's your you pay your bills, you do whatever, and you're fine. But the moment you buy that new car, the moment you buy that new house and stuff, you start living above that, and it just this box goes from here to here to here, and that tends to happen as your salary goes up anyway because you want more things. And especially, if, okay, say you're having children, say you're having whatever, if you're not looking for working with some form of support, those are all expenses that will, I guess, shock your basic needs.
yeah.
It makes you a bit imbalanced, and yeah, we're on those journeys, so it's interesting.
But we just discussed the first two layers here. So those are the basic needs. When now that we're moving on to the next two layers, those are known as the psychological needs, and
Mm.
that means that the third layer it's all about love and belonging, and it's essentially that feeling of having a deeper connection with other fellow human beings. Belonging practically refers to that human emotional needs for need for interpersonal relationships. So that could be friendship, it could be your significant other, it could be your family, it could be even being part of a bigger cause or a bigger group. So sometimes people will find that connection in a church setting or spiritual settings, I should say, or perhaps they will do that in a charity. And it's that very feeling of feeling as if you belong somewhere and as if you are understood that gives you the satisfaction for this third layer.
Mm. It's, well, that's that. Like I said, it's actually when I think about this act more, I was about to say like I said, but if you think about it, your needs change throughout your life, guaranteed. Right? As a kid, you want your basic needs as a minimum, and then fun, play, whatever. Unless you're a genius and you're getting to work real quick. I'm sorry for all you geniuses out there who had to start working immediately. But yeah, that love and belonging. Of course, you need it from say your family, if depending on the family you had. But then of course you look outside and you want it from friends and you want it from your partner and stuff. With time as it goes on, so you start. I guess this becomes more and more, and those like psychological, physiological, no, the psychological needs place such a higher and higher importance from I guess a broader amount of people. It's not that it's not important from the start, but the where you're looking for it just starts diversifying. Maybe it's your peers, maybe it's whomever, but it becomes such a big factor, and the weight, yeah, increases.
Mm.
But I guess part of that bracket where we're at of these psychological needs. is where we get to esteem. So the next level, the fourth level in Maslow's pyramid, is the esteem needs. And these are where these fall in the hierarchy because they include where you now want your own self worth, accomplishment, and then respect from others. So Maslow classified esteem needs into two categories. You can think about them as, say, internal and external. So if I think about the first category of internal, it's the esteem for oneself, your dignity, achievement, and mastery slash independence. Yeah, think of it like that. Whereas the second classification, the external, is more that desire for reputation or respect from others, i.e., think about status and prestige, right? So Maslow indicated that the need for respect or reputation, that external factor, is way more important for children and adolescents, and precedes even the real self-esteem or dignity requirement when you're younger. Of course, you look into your parents, you look into your siblings, maybe if you're younger and you're just trying to get that respect, that dignity, that respect and acknowledgement from them. But then, of course, as you get older, it becomes, what about myself?
I like how you point to the sky as if you're like trying to get the acknowledgement from God.
Yeah, because there's no one above me besides God, right? Like, let's be very honest. My self esteem is on 12.
And those are the first four layers. And now moving on to the fifth layer, that's self actualization. Now, I'm happy to confirm that you don't need an infinity stone to achieve self actualization here. So,
It's
if you're a Marvel
ridiculous.
fan, you got the reference. If you're not a Marvel fan, I'm sorry.
Become a Marvel
Um,
fan.
become a Marvel fan, that's the solution. But self actualization essentially means or refers to the realization of a person's full potential
Mm.
and getting to the point where what you're seeking is that personal growth and peak experiences. Now, what that means practically is essentially a person striving to become the best in a specific category. Maybe they want to become the ideal parent. Maybe they want to become uh, uh, the let's call it perfect academic, or maybe they want to become an athlete. But it's essentially that mindset or that frame of mind which will strive to become the best in one particular field.
One thing about this, which I think of, because of the way it's phrased, when I look at the hierarchy, even though it's the top of the hierarchy and where you can be, I think of like rest in peace Kobe Bryant and just athletes in a sense. And the ones who are best in their field, it doesn't mean that they're just, sedentary. They don't just stop. Part of being the best can mean continuously putting that work in.
Mm,
And so it's not like a stell or like if you think of a typical ladder where you go up, you hit the next step, but it's still part of the journey. That step might be like you might have gone from those. If you think of an airport, you're walking, then you got those moving escalators, and then you might go up one of those upwards escalators. You might go in a lift, and it doesn't matter. You're in the next portion of say motion, but you're still having to keep moving. And so that self actualization may not mean just a steady point as much as a continuous journey of what you have to do to maintain it and stay up there and fulfill it.
yeah, you're
I
right
think
with that. So it's not a target, it's not a finish line, but it's just the next step of your journey.
exactly.
And I think what's important also to mention here is that with this pyramid, what Maslow was attempting to display or to explain is that if you take away a layer which is below you, then you're not able to work at the layer where you're currently at. So what I mean with that is, for example, if you are currently in a position where you are seeking after the prestige, so you're looking for esteem needs, for instance, if the safety is taken away from you, if your job is taken away from you, or if you risk health, food, water, some of the basic needs that you have in your life, then you're less able to work effectively towards the psychological need layers.
Yeah.
And what that means is that you have to go back and kind of fix the layers that are below you, which are distracting you, because those are more important and more essential towards you working effectively.
I also think it's like it can pivot your character because I think, say, for instance, in this time we're in, it's recession season, like we said at the start of the episode. So some people are losing their jobs, but they previously could have had the high esteem, right? So you've already fulfilled all your basic needs, and you're in that psychological needs. So it's like the pyramid might have shifted or something, but if you've got things in place, i.e., you've got a good CV, you've got like the character traits to make sure that you'll dive in deep and look for other roles and be able to get employed. Um, it might not, and I don't think it's as immediate as it just immediately crumbles, right? But if you're looking for years, that could be just where you can, or for a longer period than you forget years, for a period longer than what you felt comfortable with, right? That's when you can feel your pyramid start to topple, in a sense, because it was based on that foundation, and it might be part of that foundation is just the I am this person, I do these things, therefore I am at this level. And the moment it gets pulled out from you, that control is gone, that safety and security is gone, right? You're still maybe able to do your basic needs, which is the food, warmth, sleep, sex, whatever. But it's yeah, it can be at that point. So I wouldn't think of it as such an immediate woof, the rug is immediately pulled from your feet or the air is sucked immediately out of the room. But it's as if you can see you're in a room and you can feel air leaving. And you're like, I just need to plug that hole, right? I need to get to that work. And that's where I guess it can just topple your pyramid or, yeah, the hierarchy, because within a certain time frame, there's going to be too much air let out. And that's when it becomes very nerve wracking and destroys the
Hmm.
pyramid. So let's think, how is this pyramid relevant? As I mentioned already, the with an onset of recession, and we'll talk specifically about the UK because we are based in the UK, but it's global. Let's be honest. Right now, we've just faced COVID, and by part of COVID was spending a lot on factors that we didn't consider. So then the costs have gone out. But then also prior to that, UK specifically decided we wanted to Brexit, and so there's a number of things that may be impacting the economy. But what does it mean? Recession means job cuts, low profits, increased unemployment, increased costs. So just think of that. Your unemployment rates go up, but the costs are going up too. How are you affording these things? Those are all the elements that affect the two basic needs. Think about it. Those bottom two layers of the pyramid. So where your physiological needs are and your safety needs. There goes your security. There goes how am I going to feed myself if I have no job but I have to pay more. Like, in other words, say food, water, warmth, rest, safety, security. It begins. The air is now starting to be sucked out, and it's at a rapid rate for some people.
And interestingly, is we've always talked about in the past whenever there's been a past recession, we talked about how are you able to afford things, um, and this time especially, or this year especially, the cost of electricity and gas it's gone up so high that it really does affect the warmth. People are essentially staging how much electricity or how much gas they use in a day, so they're rationing it. And luckily, there is some money coming back in from the government. They give you so much money in monthly, depending on the amount of, depending on the size of your house, to be able to cope with the electricity increase. But it is truly affecting the basic physiological needs that people have, together with the
Mhm.
ability of having security and having a stable job. So people are having the rug pulled away from their feet and having to worry about those basic psychological needs.
Exactly. It's kind of scary, to be fair. When I saw a comparative table where it showed like all the European countries and their bills on gas and electric, and then it showed the UK, who was like 10 times. I'm laughing because I'm just like, huh, pain. It's a yeah, and I've heard it a lot where family friends are having to face charges that used to be like beyond what they pay within 1 year. They're now paying in 1 quarter, and that's extreme impact to your basic needs, the things that you have to, because that's just the standard. This is when you go home, right? This is the part of your day which is the downtime part piece. That's what's being affected. It's none of your luxury. It's not. It's before you look into yourself. You're like, I just need to pay this bill, and then I'll go and do X, Y, and Z. And that's what's getting impacted here.
And we're talking about cost of living increasing here. So specifically, looking at numbers, the the inflation is up by I think 14.8%. So that essentially means that every single buyer in the UK has lost 15% of buying power.
That's only at this point as we do this podcast. Who knows what's about to happen going forward? Yeah,
15% is what you get from a fairly good promotion. So
that's
if
a
you get
very good
promoted at
promotion for
work,
some people, by the way, because some people
sorry,
get like 4%. That's a very good promotion for some people. I was thinking
yeah.
about this. Some only get like 5%. This is a good promotion, a decent one, I'll say, because of course some people get 50. But a decent promotion is what you're now getting impacted.
So it's almost if you don't receive a pay rise, it's almost as if you lost 15%. So someone has turned around and said, "Great job from last year. I'm gonna give you a pay cut," and it's gonna be a pay cut of 15%. And
And
just to put it in context, yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, thinking about it, what companies might not choose to do is just try and meet the inflation. So because what you could afford, even if you did nothing, right, is now reducing since your salary is getting impacted due to this inflation, and by all your living costs, all your that foundation of needs is getting hit. So then, if you're if you just stayed, if you didn't get a pay like a promotion from work, without a promotion, technically everyone's getting hit. Well, a lot of people are being hit.
But also without being given not even a promotion, without even being given a pay rise that matches the inflation, which
Exactly.
has happened to me in the past, but that was with an inflation of 2%.
Mm.
Now we're talking about an inflation of 15%. So what does that mean when you're earning, for example, £20,000? Well, 15% of that is £3,000 a year. If you're earning 40,000, that's £6,000 a year that you're affected by. And at 60,000, that's £9,000 a year.
Let's just remind people that's a minus. Before that, that's a takeaway. If you're earning 20,000, you're really earning 17. 40, you're really earning, what is it, 34. And if it's 60, then you're really earning 51. And this is before taxes, eh? It's, this is after, sorry. So now that you've made this, you get everything taken and then more. It's understandable why some people are striking, I'd say. When you're like, what is becoming of me?
Exactly. There is no wonder why people are striking. So we've had Royal Mail, we've got transport worker, we had the border control, we had the nurses all striking. And perhaps sitting from an outside perspective, you might be looking at them and think, just get on with your job. Like everyone is in the same position. But if you look at group of workers, such as nurses, for example, they have not had a basic increase to the pay rise for years. So forget about the 15% inflation that we have right now. This situation has been ongoing for a number of years. So that means that the basic pay has not increased at all. So it's not just a 15%, but it's more than that. So of course they're turning around and saying we're gonna go on strike because we want to be able to have a higher salary. And let's be realistic, their basic needs are not being met, and that's why they're asking for that particular increase.
And when you think about it, there's levels to this. I know that I said this with a hierarchy, but if you look at the, say, extreme end, we have the current British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who's a multi-millionaire Prime Minister of the UK, married to a billionaire, but I don't even know if that matters. I think he's detached himself. What I'm saying here is he wants to look at the possibility of restricting strikes to provide that minimum service. But bear in mind that nurses don't like actually fully strike because they
They
still
don't.
have to work. Yeah, they need like if nurses stopped working, we're dead. Like, and I've seen recent in news about how like they're saying it's because of COVID and other things. It's not because of the strikes that there are now 24-hour queues and ambulances and things that are just destroying it. It's like, whew. But you would think that the prime minister, as an educated politician who probably would have mastered their basic needs and psychological needs, like as a given. If you're a multi-millionaire and you haven't figured that out, I'm kind of surprised. And you're running the country, I'd be very scared. I say this, but I think back to all the presidents and prime ministers. But forget that. Forget that. You'd think that he would be able to look at the bigger picture of the country and realize the nature of the demands, the reason that. And that's why we like likened it to the Maslow's hierarchy. Because if you think about the needs that people have as a general, these are the things that are being impacted with decisions or indecision. And in the state of a recession, these are the things that has to be accounted for. So I guess waiting can just blow things out. And yeah, there's expectation at this point, right, to facilitate people's basic, not even psychological yet, but it is impacting them. Like it's the bottom of the hierarchy. It impacts all of the top and knocks that foundation apart.
And you're right. There is different layers to it because, as you mentioned, he's a multimillionaire. But then, if you look in a country, there is a number of people that sit in the middle class, perhaps, and that earn more. And what's been affected, what they're being affected by, I should say, is potentially their disposable income. So they may have less disposable income than they had before. But when we look at people that are earning less, maybe people starting their career, maybe families that have got a single parent, or maybe people that they are in service jobs and they tend to earn less typically. We are talking about their fundamental needs being affected. So there is a huge discrepancy in how this particular increase in prices or inflation is affecting people. And you're right in a way to say that it's it would be expected that the prime minister would understand this pyramid and would understand that there is in fact a problem, and looking at blocking strikes from happening isn't really the solution.
So we'll see what type of solution it is. But yeah, I guess that's it. When you think of it in reference to the hierarchy, this pyramid, um, at least it brings, well, we always bring that perspective, that viewpoint of, oh, and I think a lot of the time, when we talk about esteem, about your own esteem and the external esteem from others, but self-actualization is when we typically, and annoyingly, it's at the top of the pyramid, so we might not all be there yet, but thinking about others as well as yourself, it's easy to see where am I at. So I'm struggling, but I'm still working. You know what I mean? I'm doing all this, but I'm still okay. Just work harder. If your passion is to help people and yet you've not received a raise in however long, but then inflation is now reducing your salary, you are just being pulled down. And you had to work thrice. I can't imagine how much harder during a period where everyone needed you. You were an essential worker. And it's funny, it's really a lot of the essential workers who are striking. Like, let's be honest. So whereas others might have managed to mitigate that, it's easy not to be empathetic because you think of yourself. But then if you think about what is happening, think about just the pyramid, and then I guess let that pyramid apply to others and see just how they might be feeling. Whether or not you think it's justified or not, I think it's very interesting to understand. Oh wait, this is the point at their. Is it hitting their esteem? Is it hitting their love and belongings, or is it hitting their safety, security, or just their basic physiological needs? And with it being, let's be honest, money matters. Without it, you can't afford some of these physiological needs, and you step back. We talked about earlier about how when we were making lower salaries, our needs were lower, and as we grew with time, our needs became increased, and that's what happened. So it's maybe you can't take a step back because now you have a bigger family to think or consider, and these are all things that can impact you. I guess it's funny because when I think about physiological needs, just speaking then, as a single individual, you think about your own. But if you have any children, that is a bigger, you know what I mean? That is, theirs are also, and that's even more important than your own in a sense. You have to make sure these things, and I say children, pets, whatever. This is a key thing to keep, you know what I mean? Consider it's your responsibility. And so any impact which can be, uh, can easily happen from a recession impacts a larger group than just yourself.
Wait, when you mentioned critical workers earlier, the first thing that came in my head was, oh, you're telling me that clapping your hands on a Thursday doesn't pay the bills.
Not with the pace that you did it. Yeah. I won't even get into that. It's a
It's true though. Like we were all very quick of going outside the window, clapping our hands for the NHS, but when it comes to getting a pay rise, it
Hey,
seems
that's
more
our
of a
pockets.
struggle.
If imagine that's what they had us do, go out every Thursday and clap our pockets to be like, we're gonna empty them for you. It would be a different ball game. But this happened. That happened internationally, right? Clapping for your
Yes, I think it did.
big
Yeah.
Americas. Yeah, but that's why I like this theory, and I think though we're applying it to a recession, you can apply it to a thing, many a time, many a thing, or many any action or inaction that happens to you. If you feel shot, slighted at work, you can say, "Am I at self-actualization? Is this impacting my esteem?" You know what I mean? When someone talks to you or yeah, threatens you or something, you can say which line in this pyramid. And I don't mean threaten as in, "Hey, I'm gonna hit you" or something, but I mean when a circumstance seems to threaten your pyramid, you can say, where is this hurting right now? Is it my basic, is my psychological, or is it my self-fulfillment? What is this um uh I guess feeling like it's attacking?
Well, this brings us to the end of the episode where we discussed Maslow's pyramid and talked about how we can use it to explain what is happening in the UK right now across recession strikes, a prime minister attempting to ban unions or ban strikes altogether. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you do have a suggestion for a topic or a book that you would like for us to cover, please do get in touch with us. We read every single comment or every single message sent to us. You can get in
Yeah,
touch with us through a website, theneedlemovers.xyz, or by doing that on social media, which on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, through at the.needle.movers.
one
If you
more
like
thing to
this episode,
mention, of course, is just that we're on all podcasting platforms. Please find us. You'll see where we are. Be it Spotify, Audible, Audacity, no, Audible, Amazon, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us there, and that's where you should be giving us those ratings. That lovely golden 5.0 stars. I'm going to give you a decimal. Just every episode. Let's see how many decimals I get.
every episode you use a different number, a different
Oh,
variation
sorry.
of 5.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, it does help us to ensure that we write content which is relevant and useful to you.
Mhm.
As always, I've been your host, Valerio Tommaso, joined by my co host, Mark Jasons. And as always, until next time.
Adios.